for what happened to these children. The answer is that truly many of us shoulder the responsibility. The society, the board of directors, and the ministry all play an important role in keeping children protected. In the case of these young people, it didn't happen. And for that, we're all truly sorry. But apologies aren't enough. That only is a temporary fix. I know you want to hear about what actions have been taken in the society to address the problems that we believe contributed to these events. Over the course of 2012, staff in the Ministry of Child and Youth Services, as well as outside consultants, did a thorough review of many of the practices at Prince Edward Children's Aid Society. As a result of those reviews, it was determined that some society practices did not meet ministry guidelines. As a result, the society was given deadlines by the ministry to correct those practices, and much improvement has taken place. In fact, I'd like to share specifically what has changed within the society over the past year. I know that many of you will be thinking that shouldn't these practices have been in place all along? And yeah, they should have been, but they weren't. And what we can do is make sure that they are in place moving forward. Again, I come back to all of us shouldering the responsibility for what went wrong, and only by taking corrective action can we begin to rebuild and to move forward. So here are some of the areas that the ministry identified. This is all in the report that we spoke about. We spoke about these issues back in December. This is in the report that was recently in the media. And they're difficult. They're difficult to see, difficult to But I think it's important that you know that instead of kind of shying away from this, the staff embraced the need for change. The next slide. Talk about the things that have happened since these reviews have come out. So all files now are up to date, meeting standards set up by the Child and Family Services. There's an ongoing monthly review of standards compliance. There's an increased dialogue and oversight between supervisors and workers. Encouraging better decision making at all levels of the organization and changing some of how we make some of the decisions. An improvement in communication and partnership across child protection and fostering to make sure they're all working together more effectively. This is difficult work that we do. In many cases, people are upset with the work that we do, and it's a difficult situation because it's trying to make the best out of very difficult situations. And it's only through trying to partner with each other that we really are able to be our most effective. And that has to start within the organization, and it also needs to extend out into the community to the people who we work with. There's additional work that's been done. We appointed a supervisor in the foster care department, and who she means and continues to focus on the work that's required in the area of foster care resources. We provided additional training to staff over the last year. Increased emphasis on supervisory and worker training. And I mentioned Brad Bain has been appointed as an interim director, so it was one of the recommendations is that the society would benefit from the context of that provincial agenda, right? That's one of the values, and perhaps one of the biggest values of the model that is in Ontario. Most other provinces, it's all directly government operated. It's only in Ontario that we have a community-based organization that's governed by community board members to operate that. And one of the key and fundamental principles is that there was a recognition that we need to be able to have people in the community help make decisions about what's best for the children. That's what this one is. The things that I guess I just want to talk briefly about before I turn it over to Tammy is just the notion that, I'm not sure where it came from, a concern about with the amalgamation, will all of the issues just be swept under the rug. And I think I've talked a little bit about that, but I want to point out a few other things about how it's not. Because I think at this point, this part of today is about rebuilding trust and confidence in the community and what we do and the work we're doing. And me just saying, we're we're going to do this, and kids are going to, that's not enough, right? We need to be able to demonstrate it and show to you in concrete ways that it's happening. And there are ways that we show this accountability. And there are growing ways that we show this accountability. So one of the things that we do is we have service reviews conducted by the Ministry of Child and Youth Services, where they come in and they look at files and processes and standards. Okay? We also have financial reviews conducted by the Ministry. Both of those things have happened on at least one occasion in the last year with Prince Edward and as well as the Highland Shores. There's service and financial reviews that have been included in the past by the Office of the Auditor General. We have complaint procedures mandated by legislation that we follow that also include access to a separate body that's truly independent of the societies, the Child and Family Services Review Board. We always encourage people to talk with us directly, to try and problem solve with us, and that we do our best to resolve things as we can. Sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes we need an external process. And in fact, one of the things that's open to clients and people that we're working with in the society is if they don't feel that they want to avail themselves of our internal process, they can go directly to the Child and Family Services Review Board, and that's another method that we follow. We also have the advocate, provincial advocate for children and youth. So there's advocacy services that children have a direct line to the child advocate, and that office has certain powers to the society. And in terms of the I know that's been in the news a little bit about the ombudsman's role. The ombudsman does actually have jurisdiction over the Child and Family Services Review Board because it is a separate and independent body of the government on children's society. So, and I haven't given justice to all of the other reviews that are underneath that. When we talk about service reviews, there's multiple reviews that go into it. There's licensing, there's Crown Board reviews, there's other kind of reviews, operational reviews, all of those things, many reviews. Some are on a regular cycle of events, just yearly, whereas others might be on ad hoc basis or an as-needed basis. This is on top of the other accountabilities that we do within the society, according to the board. In Highland Shores, and those boards, and that's the case in Prince Edward as well, is there monthly board meetings and there are regular sharing of information and go back and forth. So there are lots of accountability pieces in place to try and improve those things. So that's part of the structure of the health. So we need to hear feedback about to know that we're moving in the right direction and to taking the steps that are necessary to regain your trust. That's so important to the success of our work. Our door is open. We want to listen. And we want to work with you to provide the best possible service to change. So, that's our formal part. I open up questions,
Mark? Okay. You mentioned the oversight of children's aid societies and how there's the Child and Family Services Review Board, which can therefore be investigated by our ombudsman. The issue that's actually happened in the past, and it's been proven, is that Child and Family Services Review Board does have the authority to recommend that a children's aid society do something, but they don't have the authority to compel a children's aid society to do something. So if the Child and Family Services Review Board finds out that a society has erred on some issue, they can recommend something to fix that, but they can't compel them. And what we've seen, not just with Prince Edward, but almost every children's aid society in the province, is that these recommendations are often ignored by Child and Family Services Review Board. And then what happens is, yes, the Ombudsman has the authority to investigate the Child and Family Services Review Board decision, but it's not the Child and Family Review Board decision that's the issue. It's the non-compliance with the recommendations that's the issue. That's why the movement that's been, the recent bills that have been put into place for children's aid societies with ombudsman oversight are to give the ombudsman direct oversight of children's aid societies, not just of the Child and Family Services Review Board. Wondering your opinion on that.
Well, I'm not sure. I think I understand what you're saying. I can't speak for what processes may or may not have been involved in the past, Prince Edward or other societies. probably where it comes down to me most of all is there's how many more layers of oversight is going to be helpful, and every time you add another layer of oversight, it starts to take away from the precious resources that are supposed to be dedicated to birds. And so I don't have a problem with that kind of we have to be, and I welcome it.
Okay.
I want it to be streamlined and multiple layers of different. That's probably where the problem is. So,
okay.
Again, that's registered. Well, that's for those of you, I'm not sure if people know what that question is about. There is the College of Social Workers where people can be registered. In child welfare in Ontario, is not a requirement that you be a registered social worker, and indeed not every child protection worker is a social worker. And there's many reasons for that, because there's a variety of skills that can be brought to bear, and that social work is one of them, but there's other skills that can be brought to bear in doing that. So there's not a requirement in the society, and some of our staff are members on a volunteer basis, and others aren't, and that's probably the way it's going to stay. There is some discussion in the field about becoming more closely regulated that way, and if that's the way that the field goes, then we'll go happily along with that. But right now, there's a number of things that go with it that probably are more detailed than we want to get into today, but I hope that answers your question.
Well, you understand, though, Mark, that according to the Ontario Regulation 380, the role of the social worker means role of a person who assesses, treats, evaluates an individual interpersonal societal problems through the role of a social service. Now, that technically means almost every ongoing worker in your entire building in Belleville should be considered a social worker. Under the Social Work and Social Service Work Act, it states that anyone who calls themselves a social worker, or by implication that they are a social worker, has to be registered with the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers. The reason for that is so that they're held accountable, same way as a doctor would be held accountable to their college, or the lawyers are called to the bar. So what is your opinion on the fact that almost every ongoing worker is in fact performing social work but is not registered with that college as per the law?
Well, I think that there's a lot to that question. I think part of what it is, and the best way that I can answer it is I know that that's been well examined in the field, that it's been well examined by government, well examined by the ministry, and the conclusions to this day that child protection still is not considered to fall with that. My understanding of some of the reasons for that is because of the nature of our work, that some of the accountabilities that are mentioned, a couple others that I didn't even mention up there about the court process, so that we're going to become involved with mandated requirement to go before court, and there's a different status that's accorded than it is often for other social workers. So there's many other things, so that's probably the best answer that I can give.
Now, you mentioned going to court. There's one thing that you've mentioned a few times in the media is that apprehension of children is a last resort. Well, there's actually a case in the Belleville office, for example, where a worker had been proven to apply for a warrant to apprehend 3 children from a home in, well, I can't say it, but what happened was, due to the due to the fact that the allegations were unfounded at the time and there was no significant child protection concerns, that warrant was denied by a justice of the peace. Later on that day, that worker apprehended those 3 children. Now, typically, because of if that worker was registered with the college, that worker could potentially have repercussions for that. On top of that, this worker specifically has stated to numerous people that she is, quote, above the criminal court when the criminal court would decide something that would go against what she had said. This is a worker in your building, in Belleville.
Well, I'm not aware of that. I think that's...
You should be aware of that, Mr. Kartusch. You're the executive director.
That, if there's things that happen that are against the way that you're presenting it, so I don't know all...
I mean, I have a copy of it right here. You can look at it if you want.
I'm not sure what all the details of that, but in terms of whenever a situation happens, if there is court order, we want to have that, and that is appropriate, and from that, I can guarantee you that the justice would be fully accountable for any contempt that would come along with that the facts of the matter would be brought to there's many parties that would do that, notwithstanding the other parties that would do it, they're there, So, I mean, I think there may be that there's more information to that, more information that none of us have at this point, but I understand what you, and I can tell you that the society is not above the law, you know, and you know, again, I don't know who or what that comment was, but, you know, that's just not the case. We fall within the law, we have certainly within the laws of the land, and the Child and Family Services Act that we have to follow.
Now, you know Mr. Chris Rouse, right? The legal services manager in Belleville. An Ontario Court Justice just a few weeks ago threatened to file charges against Chris Rouse with contempt of court due to this case because of violating a court order to not disclose files. Is that an issue as well?
No, I'm unaware of that, and there is more information. That's probably not something that we're going to be talking about in a public setting. But I would tell you that there's more to the story of that. I'm aware of some of that. And that's part of it.
Okay.
Other questions? Welcome to our latecomers.
Oh, thank you. How many board members would be staying and which would be going? Replace half of them. Like, what did the board members that were removed, did they quit, or did they?
Yeah, there was a self-selection process. It was about, this was a Prince Edward board decision about saying, hey, we want to move this along. So any exercise of the board taking and running it the way that they felt that was best to make that decision to amalgamate in the first place, to say that in order to move this along in the most effective way, probably the best way, because it's going to be Highland Shores at some point down the road, because it was already a fully constituted board at Highland Shores, that would be best sent that way, and then amongst themselves decided who would be willing to stay on and who would be willing to, right? And there was also recognition at that point that we also wanted to keep at least a few Prince Edward board members to help with the continuity of that. So I think those are all the things that I'm looking at.
Did he retire, or did he, was he removed? He retired.
Robert Generally, he retired from.
Yeah.
What happens when you get for a parent that takes over and corrupted by the Children's Aid Society?
What I would say to any parent, whether it's Prince Edward or whether it's Highland Shores or any CS, is first make sure that you talk to your worker and try and work it through with them. Okay? And find a way, and if you need some help with that, getting someone to speak with you, because this is a difficult situation. Families are involved with us and we're not seeing eye to eye. That's a pressure cooker, right? And I don't know about you, but I sometimes need somebody to help me on the side of me. Tabby, think you vouch for me on that one? So that's one of the things. Talk there. That's what our complaint process is. It's about, and it's not about complaint. We haven't called it that before.
For 21 years of this, I've used the force in the complaint guidelines with Picton CAS. It's the garbage bin as you're walking out the door.
Maybe I'm asking you to give us another chance. If that's where we'll have this, because I want to tell you that I am very, now, we don't always see eye to eye. That's part of the thing. We have a role, we have a responsibility. We need to exercise it the best that we can. And sometimes that we don't see eye to eye. So that is something. But I certainly am committed to always having people know where we're coming from, what it is that we're basing on, why we're saying what we're saying, and to hear where we may have missed that, and to look for opportunities to find another way. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure the children are safe. First, that's our job, okay? That they have permanent connections, and most of the time, that's going to be with the family that they come from, okay? Or some extended family. That's what we always want. And sometimes times change, right? So having that conversation, coming back, we have a next layer in the process with the supervisor. After that, again, yes, it sounds bureaucratic, and I know, but it's get it in writing. Find someone to help you put it down in writing, what your concerns are. And we have a process. We have an internal panel that's involved board members that come in and they hear independently. That's part of that process of being able to share that. And while I can't guarantee that it might change the end result, okay, if there is something that we can find our way to make it work more effectively, I know, because I've been involved in lots of these processes. And sometimes, yes, you need to see things differently, and that that's going to happen sometimes. You know, that's where those other processes are. You know, we're at that level. That's what the court has. We have opportunities to put our situation in the court, what the facts are. And, you know, I know that that's not a perfect system either, but there are steps all along the process.
Now, what would be your opinion on, I understand that a lot of the, I mean, CAS workers are human, so sometimes things do go wrong. Sometimes, for example, they might even be untruthful to what's happening. But a lot of workers, of course, are good people, and they're doing things to help and protect children. But what would be your opinion on, for example, recording interviews, audio recording interviews between workers and parents and clients and children, just to confirm, for example, in case a parent had an issue with a discussion that had happened? Because I hear it, I advocate for a lot of children myself and families, and I understand that in almost every case, whether it's true or not, whether the parents are lying to me or not, almost every parent I talk to says that workers will often twist their words and say things that weren't said and so on. Now, would you be opposed to audio recording all of these conversations so that no matter what the outcome, whether the parents are just disgruntled parents or whether the worker may be twisting words, just to keep it, you know, fair, and obviously the recorder wouldn't lie. So what would be your opinion on that?
Ask a lot of opinions, so it's not just my opinion that matters.
Yeah.
It's also the fact where there's a lot of rules and procedures about recording things in what format they go, especially when it goes to things that go to court and how that all. Secondly, there's the whole process of, you say that recording a lot. Well, we all know that you can manipulate those. So I'm not sure if it doesn't do anything more than escalate an issue and create more barriers in a relationship. What I'd like to see happen, is my staff write down things correctly. They're supposed to. That's their job. If they don't write it down correctly, that's something that we would follow up with them on.
But then it's simply the parents.
The person that we're working with also has the ability to write it down as well. And I think that's part of the thing, and we all know that communication. You and I can have a conversation, and we'll go out and we might recount little different things. Neither of us are lying. Neither of us are. We just taking something different, and that's where the process, though, is when we find that, and we have to sit down and talk it through and say, hey, this is where I was coming from, where are you coming from, and and then it does show up in a different place or something. Then you also have the opportunity. Well, no, this is what was said. No, this is what was said. And people agree and disagree on it.
But then it's simply a matter of a parent's word versus a child protection worker, and obviously a court or anyone in general would assume that the parent must be discredited compared to the CIS worker.
I understand where that sentiment comes from. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily accept that at face value. Mm-hmm. Okay? I've been on the stand before. I've always told the truth, and I've had to give lots of good, wherever it comes from, and been pushed and questioned on that. And I think what that does, again, not being, I give the judges more credit for that, and the process more credit for that. That's what the process is in fact, what a court at its essence is trying to find a way, people disagree, to find a way of getting the truth and somebody to decide. Right?
Yes.
So, I understand, so I don't want to come across as being, because you're right, society's having a lot more resources. It feels like there's an imbalance in the power, all those kinds of things, and I absolutely understand that. Mm-hmm. I also can tell you, though, that because we understand that, we try to do everything that we can to try and equalize that, where we can have that happen, and that's part of the imperfections of our system, not just in the child welfare system. The same thing that you have in family court, that happens a lot as well. Criminal court, there's some things, but I can tell you my experience is the more that we can sit down, work it through. If we're having difficulty seeing eye to eye, get some help, either from someone outside, from another worker or supervisor to help move that. Sometimes that's where mediation comes in. That's an alternative to court, and that's part of the reason that was brought in, is to help to address some of the limitations sometimes of that legalized kind of process.
Sorry, I just want to get this straight. It's not legal to tape an interview or something or it is illegal.
Well, I think you have to have the consent of the personal material.
Okay, no, because I had read in my court papers that when they interviewed my children, they recorded it. Well, if I can't record children when they access the kids, how can we record it?
So there's some different rules that happen for when there's investigative processes. Depending on what the police are involved. Okay.
I'm just trying to clear up your corruption in my head, that's all.
Now, you do understand that the Criminal Code 183.1 states that any conversation that's recorded only needs consent from one party. So that means it could be, for example, if you're in a private conversation with someone, you could record that conversation without their consent based on the fact that you recorded it, based on the fact that you gave consent. So that applies with any recording, no matter what the circumstances. But
that's not my understanding, I'll accept yours. I guess part of it for me, the point is that I don't want us to lose sight of the point is. I think if we're at a point where we're having to tape record and, doing it in a way that is even, we're not doing it up front, then that tells me that there's something that we need to do differently in our discussion and conversation. That's all. At the end of the day, this is not about right or wrong. It's about trying to find a way to get to a solution that works for a child, for a family. And again, I know that we're not always perfect in getting there. That's part of it, and that's why we have some of these processes in place to try to keep coming back to this. The board, previous executive director, the staff.
They really don't talk about
Well, no, where they all cared deeply about children. They all did their best. There's problems that
Jack
happen.
Ward was my lawyer. Steve Ward was the president of CAS. I spent 5 years with Jack Ward trying to figure out why I couldn't get my children back, and found out his son is the president of the board. I'm sorry, that wasn't done for love. That was done for money.
Well, that might be part of it. I don't want to hit a button there, but I would not be being fair to the work that's been done. There, in all of the reviews, all we're seeing is a slice, and it's bad, the slice that we're seeing. Okay? No question about it. And we need to do things to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and we get out of that. Okay? There's another part of the picture, though, that we haven't seen that I do want to talk about, that there was fantastic work, continues to be fantastic work, people dedicated, committed,
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Okay, so
After 21 years of what I've lived with, I will be very happy to see it. This town is just, no, not the town, I'm sorry, it's not the town. That office is corrupted. My kids went into care the very next year, 90% of the cars in the parking lot were brand new. I can tell you stories that would scare the hands right out of you. Picton CAS are not nice people. And I don't care with anybody.
and I don't want to put you in a position where you have to kind of...
Like I said, it's Picton, this is High Shore.
Yeah.
I have no problem.
But, so...
As long as I'm willing to see the change and work, then
Then I appreciate that. I thank everybody for coming today. If you do have any other things, I wasn't fishing for compliments, really. I was actually looking for a...
I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday. I know my kingdom awaits, and if forgiven my mistakes, I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home.